Well, I found out that Bob Kiviat is going to be on Stephen Cambian's Truth Seekers, which is great. Let Bob Kiviat be Bob Kiviat. But because I know Bob Kiviat very well, better than most people, let's put it that way, I know that Bob Kiviat doesn't always tell you the full truth. I can easily prove it. So what I'm doing is two things. I've told him to stop playing UFOlitics. He is claiming credit for things he shouldn't. I'll just put it that way. And I'm going to let the documentation speak for itself. I'm not going to say anything here. And I don't really care what he says, except if he says anything that is a liability or is going to cause him problems, then I'm going to act on that. He can figure out what that is. I'm not going to be as conscious. Now, all I'm going to say is, since I know him very well, and when he tells you about alien autopsy, he's not going to tell you the full, complete story. I will. Meaning, I'm going to listen and see what he has to say, whatever it is. I'm not going to watch it live. I'll watch it in a couple days. And then I will issue a video retort where it is necessary and where it is wise to do so. In other words, what is necessary is always wise. So if Bob Kiviat says anything about the alien autopsy case or any other thing that he knows or says about whatever, and I am in a position to tell you things that he doesn't, for whatever reason, I will simply do it. That's it. And it's in the interest of full disclosure. That's my only motive. And we've decided in the show UFOlitics to do this with more than just Bob Kiviat. It's just that Bob Kiviat happens to be the first one, and it's kind of a perfect storm of timing, and that happens. It actually was cemented with fake Dr. Kevin Randle. When Stephen Cambian had on his show fake Dr. Kevin Randle, using Randle, who is a fraud, to bash a fraud, that's kind of like using Nick Pope to expose Lou Elizondo. That's a little interesting dynamic there. But in Stephen's defense, as he explained, he thought Randle had something valuable to say. And yes, Randle does have valuable things to say when Randle bothers and cuts out the bullshit. He's managed to do that more than once. Unfortunately, everything else about Randle, or more than enough, is worth exposing, and I have exposed Kevin Randle along with Bob Todd probably more than anybody. And there's a lot more of that coming, especially now that Philip Mantle is playing UFOlitics. So back to Bob Kiviat. He can say whatever he wants about whatever. I don't care. All I'm going to do is do video retorts. I'm going to watch the episode at some point when I have time, and I don't have a lot of time. Or I'll watch pieces of it or whatever, probably, because I can do it here or there. And I will say my comments. So let me give you an example of one of the things that Bob's probably going to do. I'll head it off at the pass right now because I know him. Bob Kiviat, for years, he's tried to bamboozle me with this, has said that he always approached Alien Autopsy as a investigation trying to get to the truth, and he's a producer trying to get to the truth, UFO investigator, and so on. Sounds all very story-like he's a Kolchak type guy that did Fox stuff, whatever. No, it's much more nuanced than that. He's not. There's a lot of stuff Bob just doesn't do because he doesn't have a gig, and that means someone isn't paying the bill. And I have a real problem with that. It's been my experience that the best researchers don't wait to get a gig to do their stuff. They use their mouse, click it a few times, and shit gets uploaded on the internet, and the truth gets out there. And that's the way you can do it. I worked at Apple, and they invented a lot of this stuff, and come on, really? And I personally have trained Bob Kiviat on fucking Macintoshes and helped him and have dragged him through the mud, kicking and screaming over the years to get with it. And then he says things like, oh, Kal, you know, I should have listened to you years ago and so on. Yeah, you fucking should have. Also, he never really understood our relationship the way he should have. he never took the intelligence aspect of it seriously, meaning, or even thought about it. It was always about Bob. It was always about, being the guy on TV to break the thing, even if it wasn't his work. And it got old. And he screwed me so badly on the last Alien Autopsy thing in Europe that I quit talking to him for 10 years. And he can't tell you today what he did because he doesn't really remember, because he didn't really care. But as the person who suffered the most from his lies, I care. So I challenged Bob Kiviat to this, and I was going to do this anyway. We scanned 100 million pages of data and 5,000 books and videos into our UFO Commander data systems. We're now releasing products based on analysis and exposés of this material. I challenged Bob Kiviat to a debate on any UFO case that we both know about. Obviously, we can't debate things we don't know about. I want Bob Kiviat to take the best case he thinks is out there, and I'll be happy to debate him on it. I'll also debate him on anything he claims about himself, meaning when he says things that just aren't the full truth, I'm going to, if I can do it, if I'm not qualified, I won't. I'll tell you the full truth, because you need to know that. Because he's out there claiming he's telling you the full truth, and he's not. And we were going to disclose a lot of this stuff anyway, because I've recorded over 700 hours, not 700 hours, 700 videos, of Bob Kiviat stories, because all this is coming out. I have 50 years of archives and material, and everything's been documented up the ass like you can't believe. And that's why I have no tolerance or patience for anybody who plays UFOlitics. I don't care if they're the person who used to pay me to be their former director of research, and that would be Bob Kiviat. No games. So, you have an announcement to make about Mr. Nick Pope. Please tell us. So, as the president of UFOlitics, I have contacted the district attorneys in 2 states, and I am formally filing a complaint for consumer fraud against History Channel's Nick Pope. Nick Pope is a fraud. He is a fake British Ministry of Defense UFO Director. That's what he claims. Now, he doesn't claim he's a fake, let's be clear. He claims instead that he was the Ministry of Defense's UFO Director for the British government. No, he wasn't. The claim is a lie. It's a fraud. There was never any such program in the British government. This was first exposed in 1999, as in Nick Pope was first exposed, by UK researcher James Easton. He's a top researcher, very detailed guy. So Nick Pope has made hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years, conning people. He has lied so much and pulled this con off that he is being exposed by a major journalist very shortly, and he knows it. He's blocked me because I told him I'm exposing him. And then you know what he did, Testicles? When I mentioned on Twitter that he was going to be exposed on this show on UFOlitics, he actually links to a website that threatens to kill me and cyberstalks me and has police complaints against him for death threats. I have a folder full of these things. And that's what Nick Pope does. And of course, it is a crime to link to a website that commits crimes and kind of helping the furtherance of crimes and inciting people and saying, hey, look at this guy, whatever. You don't just link to something just because you're told you're going to be exposed when you know you're a fraud. And I'll break it down for people. Nick Pope knows he has never been the Ministry of Defense's UFO Director for the UK government. He knows his own claim is not true because unless he's psychotic or schizophrenic, he knows what he made up. Nick Pope is guilty of deliberate, calculating fraud. He can't claim he's innocent or misunderstood. Okay? Now, having proven that obvious logic, we have a problem. He has taken his con, and he's earned a lot of money and fame over the years. Without his con, people wouldn't know who he is. And now people are finding the truth. And the second scandal that arises out of this is obviously the media. Why the fuck were they even taking this guy at his word? Why didn't they check? When the data was always there, they just didn't bother, or they ignored it. There's a lot of that, and a lot of don't bother. Most of the media doesn't bother. That's how degenerative they have become today. But in the case of Nick Pope, they just didn't, they know better. So that is another scandal, in addition to the crimes of consumer fraud that Nick Pope has committed. Because, let's be honest, nobody pays money to see a fake British Ministry of Defense UFO Director. Instead, they think they're seeing the real Fox Mulder. No, they're not. Fox Mulder does not exist. It's bullshit. Okay? And, let's be honest, if Nick didn't market and push himself and lie and deceive people in his con and blow into town, market and push himself as being either the real Fox Mulder or whatever stick he uses, or the British government's former Ministry of Defense UFO Director and an expert on conspiracies and UFOs and who knows what. Ask Nick what his shtick is in bullshit and fraud. Depends on the gig he's doing, see? But there is so much fraud there that you can map them to specific laws that are being broken. And it really becomes a question of, do authorities care and are they going to do their jobs? Well, we're going to find out, because as I've made clear in the letters, the presidential letters I've written, straight to the right people, I hope, or I'll be directed to them, this process is now starting, that we're going to see. Consumer fraud is consumer fraud. There's other things that are being taken as well. I'm reporting Nick Pope to the police for jeopardizing and threatening my life. And I'm going to release details on that. So even he can't deny he's done it. This is how serious this is, and this is just the beginning. So I have complaints now in 2 states. There's 48 more to go. There's federal level stuff. And I will not elaborate on other things like stockholders and networks and TVs and History Channel. These are all things that other reporters are going to cover as Operation Pandora's Box helps prosecute Mr. Nick Pope and try to compensate his victims and stop the UFOlitics and fraud that Nick Pope is engaged in, starting with these first 2 complaints, which will be released very soon. Trust me. We'll also have an announcement to make about Mikey Horn, who is the Billy Meier UFO cult spokesman for the North America. Yeah? You have something you wish to announce regarding Mikey? Consumer fraud is consumer fraud, period. It doesn't really matter whether you're selling fake UFO photos, lying to people, claiming these show real Pleiadian beam ships with messages for humanity. No, they don't. They're fake ships. They are literally small models made from upside-down dinner plates with a cereal bowl inverted on the top of it, upside down and dressed up a little bit. You can actually see its construction in these hilarious photos. And you know it's a small model because the object is in focus, and it's supposed to be 22.75 feet in diameter. Yet the trees in the background are out of focus because it's essentially tabletop photography. When you don't use the right aperture setting and you focus objects, you have to focus closely, the background's going to be out of focus. Anyway, this is basic optical physics 101. And you can clearly see this is a fake ship. It is a fraud. There's other photos. They're all frauds. There aren't any real Meier UFO photos at all. None of them show Pleiadian beam ships from other planets. And because they don't, and because Billy Meier knows he faked his own photos, he has to know. Even if he's schizophrenic, at least part of his brain would know. He's guilty as fuck under the law. Beyond guilty. Because he can't say he was mistaken. He can't say he didn't know. He can't say he was fooled by the aliens. No. He has to say instead that, whatever, it's up to him. But there's no way he could not know. So the fact that he says these are authentic, when he made a point to fake these, is a crime. So I have filed complaints in 2 states against the Billy Meier UFO cult, specifically Mikey Horn, who is their spokesman in North America for the Billy Meier UFO cult. Separately, there are other complaints starting against the cult itself, and those are taking place at locations that will be disclosed later. But keep in mind that there's 48 states to go, and this is just beginning. There's a lot of stuff going on about this. I can't reveal very much, but I will tell you that there is a lot more involved in this than just consumer fraud. And if consumer fraud were the only thing involved in this, it's still a huge story and a win for consumers, because the Meier case, the Meier cult, the Meier fraud destroys families and brainwashes children, corrupts them, and just has made millions and millions of dollars. And where do you begin to say this is wrong? Look at the data that exposes Billy Meier. It is one of the biggest frauds, if not the biggest, most successful UFO cult of the modern era, from the 70s when it became popular up to the present time. And that is why, over the years, I have repeatedly exposed it. And that's why. Well, to be honest, I'm doing this only for one reason. And the timing is rather perfect storm, if you will. But the timing has nothing to do with anybody. It just happens to be going down now, and I told several people in advance this was going to happen during this time. And then whatever other people do on these same dates, I'm not responsible for. I don't care who they are. So to make a long story short, because I know Bob Kiviat very well, to be blunt, I've bailed his ass out many, many times. I've been everything from his director of research to helped him out on countless projects. And what I've done lately, because he's not telling people the truth, and when he's not telling people the truth, he's claiming credit for things he didn't do. He's implying that he's got this stuff going when he doesn't. It's kind of a bit Frank Kaufman-ish, if you will. And as I told him in writing again recently, and I told him always, because I've never had a different position, Bob, what are you doing when you're doing documentaries about saying there's aliens on the moon? What the fuck? Are you back to the alien autopsy days? And speaking of alien autopsy, I know all about that, to the point where I can tell you where Bob Kiviat was not honest and truthful regarding that case. And I have recorded 700 hours, or I'm sorry, not 700 hours, but 700 videos recounting everything about Kiviat over the years. And I've done it because I have a thing coming out, What I Think I Know, and I've done it for this series because we digitized and put into our databases the Calmander data and UFOcomp systems, which have been around since the late 80s. And then, of course, UFOcomp was around since the 70s. It's even been in the news and media since that time. When I was a kid, there's images of me holding up the file system, The term UFOlitics, all that. It goes back way to then. I don't give a fuck what Bob Kiviat says about that. He's fucking lying and ignorant and playing games. And again, this is the problem I have with the guy and why he has ended our friendship and why I won't deal with him. In fact, I would say to anybody dealing with Bob Kiviat, trust but verify and double check it, because just because he said yes doesn't mean he really, really agrees to it. It just means he heard you. Kind of reminds me of what it was like living in India for 7 years. Anyway, so if you're going to work with Kiviat, as I drone on here, you need to do, in my opinion, you need to make sure there's another person in the room to witness things. And then you should record it. You should repeat back what the so-called understanding is and then hold him to it and then watch what happens at that point. All kinds of things happen. Anyway, because I don't play UFOlitics, and he does play UFOlitics, and I cite many examples, and what he did with the CIA's Pandolfi, that I told him I was exposing him. I have to ask, I'll ask this question publicly. Did he tell Pandolfi that Kal Korff has told me that he's going to expose you? He could do it now, but he's been waiting for my court case to finish. And now that I've destroyed my own court case, meaning Kiviat destroyed his own court case, he can explain why he's a victim on that. His lawyer lost his license. Oh, Bob didn't tell you that. Okay, whatever. I'm sure he'll come clean about that, right? No, not necessarily. See, because the problem I have with Bob can be summarized this way. It's never Bob's fault. He has a hard time admitting when it is. When you discuss ideas with him, suddenly they're his. He's the only one who figured it out or whatever, and you just don't get the credit that you earned, especially when it was your idea, or you put something in his head or worded things in such a way where you knew the light bulb, or you hoped his light bulb would go on. Yeah, you have to play that game with him. And so I saw so much over the years and overseas with this guy that, I'll put it this way. When he screwed me over on Alien FRAUDTopsy when I was in Europe, not only did it cost me $10,000, and I told him this more than once, and he didn't give a fuck, but he lied to me. And I didn't talk to him for over 10 years. And then when he calls me, he says, "Oh, Kal, I don't know what it was that came between us, but hey, let's move forward, let's whatever." And I'm like, wow, you don't even remember. It wasn't important enough for you to remember. And you damn well should have, because you fucking lied to me. And then when I caught him doing this again, people were complaining to me that, "Hey, Kal, I'm looking at stuff that I saw years ago that you did, and he's saying he did it, whatever." And other stuff that I'm just not going to go into because I don't have to. Enough. So I told Bob, cease and desist. I said, don't claim credit for stuff that isn't yours, or think that just because you came up with something and I blew some sunshine towards you. Because at that time, Bob Kiviat was homeless. I don't really care to disclose this or go into much more detail, except to say that when I was helping Bob and doing the work for him in the sense of as a team, like, hey, we're going to work together on this and we'll do this show together. If it doesn't work, then I'm going to take my stuff and go. And of course you don't have a right to use it because it's my stuff. And then he calls me and says, "Oh, Kal, that music, where'd you get it?" He's like, "Bob, I write my own shit, okay? And I'm going to use it for my stuff." And he had seen footage I'd shot in Europe and India over the years. And, again, his memory is so self-serving and selective that it is I'll be honest, it's pathological. He works himself up into his reality distortion field and tries to get gigs off of it. And that's all it is. It's about Bob. And again, he was sitting on and living on the couch or bed or wherever he was sleeping, ask him, at his girlfriend's. And they weren't even together, and she was putting up with this circus. And you could tell, ask her, put her on the show. And this is what I had to work with. So, of course, I'm going to move on. And then, of course, this lawsuit, I worked very hard to join it with the TTSA stock fraud stuff, but he just wouldn't go there. I urged him to file complaints with the fucking SEC. He wouldn't do it, even though I'm telling him I'm doing it as a whistleblower, which I did. I got case numbers. But he just wouldn't run with the ball because he didn't have a gig. And that's how he works. Someone else pays the bill. He's there, as long as it's Bob Kiviat. I don't work that way, especially when I worked for companies like Apple, where my blood, sweat, and tears and life is into some of these products. I believe that a mouse and a mouse click and software and desktop publishing, internet, all the stuff that I've been part of over the years and know the people who did it, or I did it with them or myself, that's the way to get your info out. You don't need a big budget and say, "Oh, it's Bob, whatever." Talk about somebody who tries to sculpt a narrative where it's all about him. No. So he'll have you believe that he's a journalist that's always after the truth. Yeah, as long as he can get a gig. It's a lot more nuance than that. And then look at what he did on Alien Autopsy. He tried to drag it out longer than he could get away with. He was trying to use it to parlay into some sort of series where every week he's getting closer and closer to what the truth is about Alien Autopsy. Well, at that point, you're just fucking milking the cow and wasting people's time. Because as I told him over and over and over, which is why I put that chapter on Alien Autopsy in my Roswell expose book, which is the Roswell UFO crash, what they don't want you to know. Hello? Roswell was not caused by aliens. It was caused by Project Mogul. That's been proven. Liars and deniers claim otherwise, and we expose them in UFOlitics, especially people like fake Dr. Kevin Scandal Randall and Philip Mantle, because he's promoting fraud Randall, who has a fake PhD. Hello? Anybody going to talk about that? Talk about avoidance and ufology. So, Bob Kiviat is this weird, as an unusual person, in that he's never really understood my relationship with him. He's used me many times. He's lied to me many times. And I've always tried to protect him because I've always approached what I've done from an intelligence operation and ufology thing. What is necessary is always wise. And I was always doing other things where I would combine these operations into different things. And I had to focus on results, not people's feelings. So there were times where I wasn't in touch with Bob for a while overseas, doing work on his behalf. And all of a sudden I show up with the stuff he needs. And he didn't like my methods, and he gave me a metaphor about hitting a ball out of the park. I go into details in my autobiography on that, and he's right. So to see him behave the way he is now, I'm sorry, I had to go to the police. And we're going to see what happens now. Hi, Bob, it's Kal. I prepared this short video to show you how easy it is to track the Russians. That's why there's no excuse to believe in these conspiracy things the way these guys are. I'm going to prove it, and again, I can do the visualization stuff and show you. Now, what you're seeing here is just one example, and I use this stuff all the time. A lot of people do, certainly security experts. This is a real-time map, essentially, of cyber attacks that are underway now around the world. Their IP addresses are traced. They're color-coded based on the severity. This is real, and this stuff looks really nice. It's beautiful. But it's a real deal. And then you can see who's firing on whom. Of course, a lot of the red dangerous activity comes from Asia and Russia and so on. And you can drill down in here. And then what you can do is get IP addresses, which you can trace to specific locations as in buildings. And this is just one example. I'm just filming this real quickly. Again, I've used these for years, so have computer guys and geeks. There's entire war rooms. I even have an app that we use for terrorists like this. And what you can do is drill down and see who's doing who. And that's why I sent you a file of 3 million Russian stuff, because those were nabbed by authorities and computer experts using these types of tools right here. Now I'm going to switch to another tool here, which again does the same thing. It just doesn't look as cool. And again, these look like something Pixar has done, so they'll look great on your special, CBS. Basically, this is a more old school one here, and you can see these different attacks here. And the importance here, Bob, is the screen in the lower left corner, okay? You can see, and I'll try to zoom in here, you can see the 4chan attacks, the nature of the virus, what the guy's trying to do, how he's trying to harm. And you can see that a lot of the things that are going on is that there's a attack and then there's a counter attack, like a counter missile strike, so to speak. So again, Bob, that's the significance of this. Now, if we go over to the lower left-hand corner of the screen here, you're going to see as I try to zoom in here on this clip, you can actually track the 4chan activities. And of course, Russia is in there. You can see that. It'll show up any moment because they're constantly doing crap like this. Again, the FBI, CIA, people like Pandolfi, whatever, this is nothing new, Bob. It's easy to understand. And so you need to see visually what these guys do. See, 4chan against Japan, right there. Got it. Busted. 4chan against Russia. So somebody's firing back. It's all there, Bob. IP addresses everything. Then you drill down and find out who owns that computer. Now, here's another thing that's tracking, again, the major attacks. You can see here what types of viruses are going there, okay? What they're trying to do. They're trying to attack these library files on people's Windows machines. Windows is a security nightmare. It doesn't have security. It's a fucking joke. So again, I can get you stuff, or we can arrange when you do the filming so that you can get really good looking captures of all this and track this stuff. And then, you know, there's just many different things. I've used databases where I've got 10 of these things from 10 different monitor systems running real time, and it looks like some kind of war room or something out of a Star Trek thing. And you just see this activity going all the time. It's just the way the world really is. Here's yet another one. This one is really pretty much more bonehead and, you know, not as fancy, but again, it tells you the bottom line, and that's how they were able to track this, and that's why maybe you'll understand now why the material I sent you is absolutely something that would nail and has put people in prison. This is how they bust the bad guys. I engage anyone who's relevant to carry out Operation Pandora's Box. You can see the graphic for it here. It's an operation that was started years ago by Kal Korff, the journalist. You can see what it consists of, why it has been a multi-year effort, why it is undergoing, as in still taking place today. And then you can also see some of the deliverables that have always been part of it. In fact, Kal Korff has been talking about this in his other capacities for years, and Operation Pandora's Box has involved several people who have been working with him very quietly for years through a lot of different